Economics has focused on a number of different issues in its history, beginning with Adam Smith, but currently it will be defined as the allocation of scarce resources. Now, economic theory is divided into two broad areas. One of these is microeconomics, which is concerned with the small. That is, it will focus on the theory of the firm, on consumer behaviour. By contrast, macroeconomics is concerned with the large. It's concerned with the overall rate of inflation in an economy, with the balance of payments, with full employment, and with economic growth. Macroeconomics is divided into two major models. One of these is Keynesian economics, developed by John Maynard Keynes, and the other is monetarist economics, of whom the major name would be Milton Friedman. By contrast, microeconomics is a single model focusing on demand and supply, and this is known as neoclassical economics. Economics attempts to follow the methodology of the pure sciences, in that it makes an important distinction between positive and normative statements. A normative statement, as its name suggests, involves a value judgment, a norm. Positive statements are empirically testable. So, for example, I might say, I believe in capital punishment because of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. A normative statement, a value judgment. By contrast, I might say, I believe in capital punishment because it deters people from committing murder. Now that is empirically testable and could be refuted. Now, central to economics is the concept of logical positivism. And here we emphasise the empirical link. The first stage is to create a testable hypothesis. This will involve clearly defining our concepts and developing predictions from those concepts. Now, we may develop these models either through inductive reasoning, that is, from our previous observations about the world, or deductive reasoning from the basic assumptions of our model. The second and crucial stage is the empirical testing. Now, models may be presented, they may be described, they may be illustrated graphically, or in a more sophisticated manner, they may be presented algebraically. All, however, are equally valid. When we come to empirical testing, we have two alternatives. One is qualitative. We may look at the world and see whether our observations are compatible with our predictions. This is the concept of the case study. The advantage of a case study is that it can be more subtle, but the concepts are less clear. It may be historically and socially specific. This tends to be the approach of many of the social sciences and of business studies. By contrast, in economics, the emphasis is often upon quantitative testing through the application of statistics, and in the case of economics, this is known as econometrics. Statistical testing relies upon the law of large numbers. Although individuals may be an outlier in the distribution, on average, people will act in a predictable manner. In terms of our normal approach to econometric testing, we focus upon the concept of the dependent variable, which will be a function, will be related to a series of independent variables. We will then attempt to estimate the nature, the sign, or the value of the relationship between those dependent and the independent variable. We can also, when we examine models, that is a series of equations, distinguish between endogenous and exogenous variables. Exogenous variables are variables which are given in order to solve the equation system. By contrast, endogenous variables are variables which are determined within the system itself, within the system of equations. A further distinction is made between two broad categories of data used in econometrics. One of these is time series, that is, examining the relationship between two variables over time. So, for example, we could trace an individual's consumption over their lifetime. That would be time series. However, normally we can't wait that long, so we usually use cross-section analysis. This is where we get the variability in consumption with age from a cross-section of the population at a particular moment. Although econometrics appears to present a number of significant advantages over the more subjective case study, it presents a large number of problems. Econometrics itself has a number of mathematical weaknesses. There can be problems with omitted variables. There can be problems arising from the fact that the independent variables themselves are correlated, move together and interact. There may be problems with the quality of the data that you're employing. There may be difficulties with the data accurately reflecting the hypothesis that you are creating. For example, some years ago, Heinz attempted to explain a wage inflation arising from trade union power through using trade union membership figures as a proxy for that power. This proved to be extremely unreliable. It was impossible to find a good proxy for trade union militancy or trade union power. And finally, there is the problem of causation. Because two variables are correlated does not mean that one necessarily causes the other. Sometimes you can use time sequence, that is time lags, to identify which changed first, but this still leaves you with the problem that there may be other variables outside the two that you've identified which may be influencing both. So although econometrics, which now dominates economics, appears to offer significant advantages over case study material, the weaknesses of this approach should not be ignored. Economics is very good at clarifying the questions to be asked, at defining concepts clearly. However, it is far less successful at providing clear, unambiguous answers.